Welcome, Calculus BC. This is Lesson 2.2, Chain Rule. Let's begin. So chain rule, just a reminder, this is where you have a function within a function. So we say our y is f of g of x. This is composite functions. If f of g of x, so if you want to find the derivative of this, you do the derivative of the outside times the derivative of the inside. So what that looks with this function notation would be f prime of g of x times g prime of x. The outside times the inside. If you wanted to do it in this form, like the derivative of f of u, where u is some function of x, this would be f prime of u times u prime. So two different ways of writing that. And I'll leave that up on the screen. Yeah. So let's practice what that actually looks like. So here's some examples. Now let's take this function, x squared minus 3 squared. So the outside function, sometimes I like writing that. The outside function is something squared. So you got to be able to identify that. And then the inside function is x squared minus 3. So maybe I write it like this sometimes just to break it down. So what's the derivative of something squared? Well, that's the power rule. So y prime is going to be 2 times that something, when that something's 2x squared minus 3. And then times the derivative of this thing, which is going to be 2x. So here's my answer. If I want to, I could clean this up. And I could write this as 4x times x squared minus 3. Distribute that 4x so you can get 4x cubed minus 12x. Perfectly good. Now, just for a side note for funsies, let's say I wanted to FOIL that out. And I'd say x squared minus 3 squared comes out to x to the 4th minus 6x squared plus 9 if you FOILed it. And if you derive that, you get your y prime as 4x cubed minus 12x. And hey, same answer. So sometimes you don't always have to use chain rule. If you want to just FOIL it or you can simplify it, go for that and you can avoid the chain rule. Same thing with product and quotient from the last rules. So let's try number 2. Our outside function is sine of something, and then the inside is 3 of x. So like these, you just gotta kind of like recognize, like trig functions, that happens a lot. Powers, high order powers of some polynomial happens, and square roots. So derivative of sine, y prime is going to be cosine of 3x times the derivative of 3x will be 3. So cosine of 3x times 3, I can rewrite it as 3 cosine of 3x. It's the same thing, but you might see this format more often. This one. So there's a few things we can do. We can recognize that we have the square root of something, and then inside of that is something cubed. So inside of that is something cubed, and then inside of that is 3x squared minus x. So I can treat it like this and treat it as like a double chain rule, and I can get the correct answer. However, I can also say, hey, wait, when you square root a cubed, I can just rewrite that equation as 3x squared minus x to the 3/2 power. So this makes it so I only have to do the chain rule once. So it's something to the 3/2 power times the inside 3x squared minus x. So when I derive something to the 3/2 power, my f prime of x is going to be 3/2 times 3x squared minus x to the 1/2 power times 6x minus 1. So there's an answer. So sometimes it's nicer just to rearrange things and it'll work out, but you don't have to. All right. Let's try different examples. This is kind of interesting. This is more conceptual here. So we have a function p's and q's, and if p of 2 is 5, q of 2 is 3, q prime of 2, p prime of 2. And q prime is this, q prime of 3. Okay. Find the derivative of p of q via x at x equals 2. This is awesome. So what you have to do is, this is like understanding the formula for chain rule. Derivative of p of q of x, going back to the formulas we have, is going to be p prime, the derivative of the outside, so p prime of q of x times q prime of x, right? And so we're trying to find that at x equals 2. So what we're really trying to find is p prime of q of 2 times q prime of 2. Okay. So what's q of 2? Well, q of 2 is 3. So this is going to be p prime of 3 times q prime of 2. What's q prime of 2? Actually, what's q prime of 2? We decided up here, q prime of 2 is 2. So p prime of 3 times 2. Well, p prime of 3 is 4. So this just becomes 4 times 2. So my answer is 8. This is like understanding the concept behind chain rule, not having actually do a bunch of derivatives. All right, that's the same problem. And we're done.